A food allergy diagnosis changes your life. Food allergies affect you, your family, your education, your career, your everything. That said, as with all adversity in life, you have choices in how you can handle it. Some people choose to raise their hands, stand up, and get involved as advocates. They look food allergy right in the face and say, I've got this. And they focus their energy on empowering others to feel the same. These food allergy warriors range in age and background, but have one thing in common. They turned their food allergy story into action. Now I'm going to shine the spotlight on them to inspire you to join the fight against food allergies. This is Take Action with Hillary Carter. Hi, I'm Hillary Carter. I'm a food allergy mom and advocate and proud member of FAIR's Board of Governors. And today I am looking forward to speaking to Thomas Silvera. He is a food allergy patient and parent, and he has turned the most unthinkable tragedy into action. He and his wife, Dina, have created the Elijah-Alavi Foundation, which focuses on educating everyone about food allergies to ensure Elijah's echo. Thomas, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you. And I am grateful to continue sharing my story about my son and the work that we're doing.
And so you have just done an incredible job. I have been watching you for a few years now. Our paths have crossed at several events that different food allergy organizations have held. And of course, I'm watching you on social media. And you are just an incredible inspiration, as is your wife. And what you've accomplished in such a short amount of time is incredible. There's legislative work, there's media work. It's just incredible to watch. But I want to back up for just a minute. Before we really get into the foundation and the work you're doing, I want to just talk a little bit about Thomas. So tell me sort of who you were before marriage, before kids, what's your background, what's the deal with your own allergies? Just explain a little bit about you for everyone watching.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I was born as a premature child. I was born at, I believe, at 7 months. So I had undeveloped lungs and everything. So I was early diagnosed with undiagnosed respiratory disorder at a very young age. Growing up with seizures and asthma, then also developing food allergies along the way. You know, being with parents in that time frame in the mid to late 70s, the education about asthma or respiratory disorders or food allergies wasn't there. So just imagine, it was almost like playing a game of Russian roulette as you get older because your parents are not versed or informed on the education. Then having my asthma was so bad that I actually had to be put into a hospital. It was a hospital up in Westchester in Valhalla, where I actually had to stay and get frequent therapy and treatments to understand and manage my asthma. And so I was there from the age of 12 to 19, both inpatient and outpatient. So I also graduated high school from the hospital. So it kind of like took me away from my childhood, from being sick so much, being in and out of the ERs and doctors and so forth, and getting different types of medications to understand how to manage my asthma at the time. And then getting older, it just became cumbersome. I felt like the asthma was taking over my life. Then didn't understand food allergies as much as a teen. I understand it after my first anaphylactic reaction, which was to shellfish, and then finding out medication was also a part of it with ibuprofen and aspirin. Then also having an exercise-induced anaphylactic reaction as well. And here's the interesting part: as I got older, I got into health and fitness, and I became, heavily involved in fitness and personal training. And then I never had an anaphylactic reaction to exercising. And then one day it happened again. And then I kind of like slowed down from, working out. people's like, oh, it looks like you work out all the time. I just maintain. I don't overdo it. I come from a family of five. It's me. I have a fraternal twin brother. My mom, she did her best. We live in the most like impoverished areas growing up, so it was a big struggle for us. But where we are in life now, it just shows how much my mom put into us in order for us to get to where we need to go. I'm an introvert, but a lot of people assume that I'm like an extrovert because I'm outgoing, but I love communicating with people and being around people. And I think everything before what had happened, I was very to myself and quiet. I just love working with people and being a part of a community that can just keep giving back, whether it was in my personal training or any aspects of my life that I was in. It was all about servicing and providing help in need of anything. And I didn't mind doing that. It felt like it was like a direction I needed to go into. And then I went into college early, but dropped out early, but got back into college later on in life because, having kids, that changes the trajectory of how you want to foresee your future. And I got my degree in surgical technology, and then was excited about getting into that field. And seeing my family grow, seeing my kids grow with that, and knowing that from that I wanted to keep pushing further and further. And then tragedy struck, and that kind of like literally put a whole spiral in everything I wanted to do going forward.
Well, it definitely sounds like you have had such a journey, even before we talk about Elijah's story, and have all of the tools in place and the sort of thought process of wanting to give back and be a part of wellness and a community. And you've parlayed that so incredibly into what you're doing now. So tell us about Elijah. Tell us about Elijah's story and how the foundation came out of that.
So Elijah was he was this very happy-go-lucky kid, full of love. He had strength that was like unimaginable. His brother Sebastian, their relationship was amazing. It was beautiful watching them grow together. And as we touch base on Elijah's story, I always get emotional talking about it because it's no matter how many times I speak about it or try to change the way it's said, it's always emotional talking about it. So, I remember that day that, I was heading to work. I put him in the car seat and saying goodbye. And his words was like, I was trying to rush to work, and he was like, Daddy, Daddy, make a hand, make a hug, make a kiss. And I, gave him a hug, grabbed him, gave him a hug and a kiss and said goodbye. And those are the last words I've heard from him on that day. That was November 3rd, 2017. And being at work and then getting that call, I was in the middle of an operation, assisting in a surgery, and my phone was ringing like nonstop. And then I picked it up. It was like, you have to get to the hospital like right away. And then I still had no idea what was going on. And when someone was like, my wife was like, I don't think he's going to make it. And it kind of like baffled me because it was like, it felt so untrue. Like this gotta be a joke. I kept in, it was already too late. I didn't even have time to say goodbye or anything, so from that, to kind of like scale back a little bit, my son was at a daycare center in New York City where they had fed him an allergen that caused him to go into an anaphylactic shock. Them not giving the right information to my wife. My son was also an asthmatic. Not giving the right information to my wife rushed him to the hospital where the anaphylaxis had already far gone, and it took over where we know that the organ system starts to shut down from there, and it's just hard to put those in perspective of like how could that happen? Easily could have been avoidable had they would have taken action. So now we're left with this constant emptiness and this piece that's missing. And not just my life, but everyone that Elijah's life has affected. That's that missing piece that people are going to continue going in life and knowing that piece is missing because someone had took away that part from us. And through the tragedy and grief, as we still continue going on today, my wife and I, we knew we needed to do something. Although my son had an IEP and a 504, which these are legally binding documents with schools that we need as a food allergy parent, but that didn't really sit well with us. So we looked into some legislations, into the anaphylaxis policy that was there, and noticed that there was some missing part to that. It only governed from K to 12, which was more of a voluntary guideline. There was nothing mandated in those policies. So I remember reaching out one of the employees at FAIR, and we had this long conversation in early December of 2017 that we needed to do something. We needed to do something fast. And I know everybody was telling me, it's what is that saying? It's like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But what had happened to my son, I needed it to be a sprint. I needed to go fast and make impactful change. Because me waiting 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for something to get done, it just would have been too much on me to see that. It would have showed that where's the care and the love that when someone has died, that action should be taken, in order to get things done. So from 2017 to 2018, we've been working on the legislation, working with our local assemblymen and senators and getting others to co-sponsor the legislation. It was kind of like, it bothered me that the Senate had passed it. The Assembly was still waiting on more information, but the Senate had gone and passed it and just added it as an amendment to the original anaphylaxis policy, just extended it out to daycares, but it was still a voluntary guideline. That wasn't good for my wife and I. So we decided to just crack down and work solely with the senator and the assemblyman on our own. We rewrote a whole passage for that part of the legislation where it focuses on daycare and pre-Ks. So we rewrote that whole section and was able to get it passed in the Assembly and the Senate, and then signed in September 2019 into law by Governor Cuomo. That was a big moment for us and an emotional moment because, okay, I said, great, action has taken place, but I realized there's still a miss that people don't understand when it comes to legislation. We can all be excited about a legislation being passed, knowing that we worked hard to get it done, but it has to take more work from us as the people, as the constituents and the community, because no one knows that a law exists unless you continually being an advocate and an activist on pushing that legislation, on letting people and informing them about this law is in place. And that's why we started the Elijah-Alavi Foundation, so we can continue on with Elijah's Echo, which is something we use as continuing his voice and letting it resonate amongst not just in New York, but anywhere in this nation or globally. And we want to create something that will leave a peace of mind for parents when they drop their kids off at school. So when you're going to pick up your kid, they're safe, because if my foundation goes into that school or that law is in place in your state, there's a law that's going to protect you and your child. And there's nothing turning back and saying that, oh, we didn't know that was there. The law exists, but it takes people like us to continue advocating and being an activist and pushing these things forward. With our foundation, that is our sole mission, is to continue the advocacy and working with schools and organizations or anybody that works with young children. And, not just young children, we want to educate parents and anyone from organizations and businesses and restaurants. It comes full circle, because although it starts with protecting the kids, but we need to get the older people to understand that this matters. We matter. Children with food allergies and asthma matter, and we have to keep them safe and protected, as we do with anyone with any ailment, from heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it. We put out all these implementations in place for them to protect them. We have these guidelines, we have these foods, we have these fundings to go into place to have these like throughout this country. But food allergies is very low on the spectrum, that where funding is very low, and a lot of research is put out there, but the information is not being grabbed by the communities or by certain organizations that are out there that should be utilizing this in their communities. So it takes people like organizations like FAIR, the Elijah-Alavi Foundation, other foundations to keep pushing this. We all have that same message. We speak a different language, but the message is solely the same. And we just have to keep pushing forward in order to get things done, because I say my son did not die in vain. and I would not let what happened to my son happen to another child again.
Thomas, thank you so much for all of that. I first just want to thank you for sharing your story. I mean, it really is just the unthinkable tragedy. And I think what every food allergy parent worries about the most sort of all the time. And so, my deepest condolences. I'm so sorry for your loss, for Dina, for Sebastian. I just feel for you and send so much love and prayers. So thank you for sharing for anybody who hadn't heard that story. And I agree with you that it's such a challenge with food allergy that it's an unseen disability. So, there's people who definitely say, well, your child looks fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. It can't be that serious. Our kids look healthy and happy, but they just have this very serious situation where they have to be very careful about what they eat. And so I agree with you. It can be a hurdle that maybe other disabilities, other illnesses may not have to work at so hard. And something that I have seen so much that I know we've all talked about in our community is when you're advocating, it's very easy to talk to each other. We're all on social media, we all connected to each other. It's easy to educate our own group, but it's really hard to break through that barrier and educate people who are outside of food allergy, which is what I think is so important about Elijah's Law and about your foundation and the work you do. You're going into schools, you're educating the uneducated, the people who don't understand food allergy. And I know that probably the hardest time in my life as a food allergy parent was when my children were in that pre-K nursery school age. They're completely unable to advocate for themselves. They're just too young. You're really at the mercy of the teachers and the staff. And so what you're doing is so important. I would love to just back up a little bit and have you tell us exactly what the legislation is that you had passed, and then tell us how you're going into schools and educating about this law and about food allergies. I know that we've been a little probably unable to do as much this year with COVID in person, but I'd love to hear a little more detail about that for anybody who's not familiar.
Okay, yeah. So with Elijah's Law, it puts into place, it's a mandated law right now in New York State. So it puts into place that the schools and the educational systems have to have an emergency action plan in place by allowing epinephrine to be in stock. The educators and staff there to be trained on understanding the signs and symptoms of food allergies and anaphylaxis. It's in making sure there are written rules in place. It's just all about protection and education and awareness, and that is the key focus. So it's like we have a lot of places. I always call we have fire drills in so many places that schools and and businesses, they do once a month in order to, in the event of emergency happen. But we're not doing anything in the event of a child with food allergies going to an anaphylactic reaction. What are we doing in the event of emergency? That's where education and understanding the signs and symptoms take place for these schools, is for them to understand that. So in the event of emergency happens, they already have the understanding and the knowledge to implement that in a swift manner. And that pretty much simplifies what the legislation is. And it may seem like it's simple, but it's not. There's a lot that goes into understanding food allergies. It's not all about knowing how to use an epinephrine. I can show that to my son and to a 3-year-old. They know how to use it, but it's how do we understand to mitigate the risk? How do we mitigate the risk? How can we avoid cross-contamination? How do we understand reading food labels? It's more than just that as well. We have to dig deeper, and digging deeper is making sure that we keep people safe. We take pride in our own health, that we make sure we eat right. We don't do certain things to keep ourselves safe. The same mindset needs to go for this or anything that can actually hurt or harm someone. Before the pandemic hit, we were going into school. Our goal in 2020 was to go into at least about 100 or more schools. And we were literally set out to hit our goal before the end of the year and do more. But going into schools, we sat with the educators. We provided them with an open dialogue in the beginning of our training, just to get a better understanding on what they know about food allergies. Then going in depth and providing like a pre-exam just to see where they are in terms of understanding. And then providing the necessary training, which was a good 90-minute curriculum. Then after that, giving a post-exam just to see where they are in terms of their understanding. So it was very in-depth. It wasn't just like a PowerPoint. There was explanation, there was lectures, there were, Q&As and how to use this and how to mitigate that. So we make sure that whatever it is that in the knowledge that we had medical professionals that were there providing the education as well as myself. So, we make sure that we want to give them the tools that they need in the event of emergency happening.
Thank you for clarifying all that. I think it's just so important, all the work you're doing. And that actually leads me to another point and another question. I know that as a food allergy parent myself and just an adult, it's interesting to look back and realize how much life is about pivots. And when things come your way, whether they're positive or negative, you have to make a choice on how to deal with that. And it can really change the direction of your life. And so I know that you had sort of a career pivot, and a lot of it had to do with your experience with food allergies and, of course, Elijah's story. So tell me about the incredible education that I know that you've been attaining. I know you finished a degree. I think you're heading into another one just so that you can be the best advocate possible and really understand all the science that you're teaching. It's just incredible. So tell me what's going on with that.
Yeah, like since everything happened, like my goal was to go back to school to become a physician assistant. But, although that's still an aspiration of mine, I needed to work swiftly in terms of like getting into the direction of public health. And I think public health is a big factor when it comes to anyone with any disability or social gradients that, I wanted to do my part and put more emphasis into it. And I think what kind of like that started that was working on the legislation, which just had just these wheels turning in my head that, wow, there's a lot of things that are missing. There's so much that is missing, especially the underserved communities, where I realized the focus is not there. The information is not there. And if the education that is supposedly provided, a lot of the people in these communities are only getting it to sustain a position without going in depth of understanding the ramifications if you don't. So it just kind of like baffled me that I saw a lot of this happening, especially in the community that I was living. Although I was in the middle class, but still the surrounding areas were very underserved. I went to school. I got my bachelor's in health science, health education, and public health, because I wanted to continue the advocacy, continue understanding about policy making on behaviors, the social behaviors in communities, learning about the biostatistics and development on certain areas of comorbidities that are on the rise in these underserved community, from food allergies and asthma being one of the most prevalent ones, especially with young children being in and out of the hospitals so much and not really being treated for these ailments because they're only taken in to be treated at a hospital and not being followed up by their primary care physician based on financial situations that hinders them from actually moving forward. So with me continuing on, like I'm going back in January, I start my master's in public health because I want to continue on in providing the resources and the education to the communities that at large in the underserved population, especially for the Hispanic and Black community, where I noticed by going into these communities with my training, the lack of education is there because it's not being provided. And, having people come up to me and ask questions during my training, like, I don't understand what this is. My kid has food allergies. They gave him an EpiPen, but I don't know how to use it. And the child has food allergies for 5 years, but the parent does not know how to use it. They give it to the school. They don't know that they need 2 at all times. They give 1 to the school and 1 at home. And they're always left with 1. And then still, if in the emergency, everything is always treated with Benadryl. It just goes on. And I noticed that there's that big miss that is not given to the community. And I'm always saying this to people when it talks about, you want to do something for the community. It takes more than just providing funds to the community and saying you did your part. I was like, if you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. You have to go physically into the communities and put in that work that you want to do from the monies that you have allocated to the communities. Show that you care about the community. Show that you want to put in the effort for the communities to understand what we have to offer them, especially when it comes to health promotion. And me as a health educator, this is what I want to focus on working on new legislations for asthma and food allergies and implementing them in the communities and keeping them abreast of what's going on. And continue working with, your local legislators, health clinics, churches, and everything, just to continue providing this information that is not privy to the community. And yeah, public health it's now a big thing for me, and I will want to continue on in getting my doctors in public health as well, because I really want to provide that, like the trajectory where my life has went into is to make sure I can continue giving back to the communities that I was raised in, and noticing, especially from a young age, being an asthmatic and food allergies, the information is still not there. We're talking about from the late 70s to we're in 2020 now, that if it wasn't there then and it's still not there now, there's a big miss. And you have people like myself in public health and parents who are food allergy advocates and asthma advocates doing their part, but we're still that drop in that ocean that we need to let that wave build out even further from there. There's a lot of work that we need to do, whether it's on a small scale or a big scale, and and bringing everybody together as a collaborative so we can keep pushing that message out, not just nationally but globally. The rates are high in other countries where public health is needed, especially advocating for those with food allergies and asthma, well, especially in rural areas in the country, and especially here in the US as well. So public health is a big factor for me. It's a big part of my life now, from everything I'm doing, working with FAIR, working with Dr. Ruchi Gupta, we're doing research within our own foundation, working with the university, providing researches on childhood education and daycares and pre-Ks. We're working on something with that, just so we can understand what's going on and just getting a more of a quantitative and qualitative information so we can present to not just our community, but to other people who wants to understand food allergies and asthma.
Everything that you're doing is so important. And I'm so glad you brought up Dr. Gupta, because I know that you have worked with her. And as you're talking through all of this, I was thinking about her work as well. And what I think is so important and maybe not well understood, and why public health is so crucial, is that in order for us to get the funding we need for the research we need to be able to say exactly how many people are impacted. And I know that since my kids were born and diagnosed, that number has grown and grown and grown and grown as we've gotten better understanding of who is actually impacted, not only in our country, but globally. And the disparities you talk about are so important. And, I feel like we're starting to really focus on that this year. I hadn't really seen enough about that in the last several years, my career as a food allergy mom and advocate. And it's so important. If people don't have access to the information or don't have access to the medication or the physicians they need, that's just a very scary, overwhelming place to be in. And so helping people break through that boundary is so crucial. And I'm so glad that we have people like you helping us with that. So congratulations on your degree, on your incredible life pivot and everything that you're doing. And I wanted to follow up a little bit as part of this. I know that you're a big proponent of the FAIR Patient Registry, and I'd love to hear sort of how you are involved with that, why you think it's important. I know I've put both of my kids in it, and it's just such an interesting database. So can you share with us a little bit about your work with that?
I think what struck me when I actually saw the FAIR patient registry, which when I first saw that, I was trying to figure out, what does that mean? Does it mean I'm just registering as a parent and them consider me as a patient? But it goes more in depth of understanding the child's food allergies, and on a more grander scale, like getting all the documentations needed by the physician and putting it into the system creates a database where that database is taken and put it into work, where you have mentioned about providing the right amount of funding to research that you're doing. And this gives a better understanding of everyone in the community and where the numbers are higher at, and who are actually putting the information into the patient registry, which they go based off of your township or state and everything. They can actually kind of like put that in a quantitative data and utilize that and put that out there. So I'm always trying to push that information there, so FAIR can get a better understanding of the communities that needs to be focused on more, where money can be allocated, we noticed that within that fair patient registry that the numbers are more higher and prevalent in the more Caucasian space amongst, the Blacks and Hispanics. So pushing that patient registry just gives a more understanding of patients with food allergies. And I think with that, it helps us do better with the research and more ways to help mitigate and find a cure. And we know there is no known cure for food allergies, but it's a way that things can actually be better understand with them working with other like research and development teams and putting out patches and putting out pills or whatever it has it to help either like reduce the allergen in the body that will reduce the anaphylactic reaction or so forth. There are many things that are going into that, but patient registry is key. And I'm going to keep pushing that, especially in my community, so FAIR can have that database when it comes around. So it just makes sense. I believe I'm going to be a big advocate for that as well.
Thank you so much. I agree. And I hope, people at home are looking for ways to take action. This is such a basic, fundamental way that they can participate in this community by registering themselves or their children. All you need is, an actual clinical diagnosis of a food allergy, and you can participate. So everybody at home, if you haven't already, please do sign up. Well, I want to pivot again and talk about something pretty cool. You are actually an Emmy winner. So tell us about your PSA, your Emmy Award, how people can find it if they haven't seen it. Give me the lowdown on that, because that is super cool.
So the woman, Sammy Mendelson, she is the director and producer of the PSA Spell It Out. She reached out to an organization and Allergies together. She wanted to put this PSA together about educating kids and parents in school. And the premise of this PSA was she wanted to honor my son Elijah. And what she told me was when she saw when she saw me in the news, literally I think the following week talking about my son in the media, it hit her heartstrings, and she was like, she needed to do something. Although she doesn't have food allergies or know anyone, but this was something that she felt that was near and dear to her heart that she wanted to do. So she reached out to Allergies Together. She reached out to Elise Bates from Allergies Together, and we've had several conversations about it. And then we got other organizations involved, like the Elijah-Alavi Foundation, Red Sneakers for Oakley, Allergy Strong. There was a lot of people involved in putting together this PSA, and we helped with contributing to it. So it plays on kids, and food allergies, and it was the premise around the spelling bee, which makes it fun and cute, but at the same time, it's informative, where the judges are they're asking questions as how do you spell like anaphylaxis, and then there's some like quirkiness about it, but the whole premise is to make sure that although this may seem like it's cute and fun, but food allergies is serious. And I didn't know that we were nominated for an Emmy, and remember getting a call like, hey, jump on a Zoom right now, and found out that I think it was in April that we won an Emmy for the Spell It Out campaign. And not just our foundation, but everyone who was involved in contributing and being a part and bringing this to the forefront. And it's just an achievement for us in a whole, especially when it comes to food allergies. Like, it's not just for our foundation. We did this for a community at large. This was to give back in a sense.
And as we were talking about earlier, this is one of those amazing ways where you really are reaching out past the food allergy community into sort of the regular world, if you will. Just think about how many people saw this who don't have food allergies and what kind of conversations that probably started. So I've seen it. It is amazing. Where can people find it if they want to go watch it?
They can go actually to the Elijah-Alavi Foundation.org website. If they go to the media section, that video is the first thing that pops up. It's the whole video. It shows that it's an Emmy Award-winning video. Who was involved in the making of that as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I know people are going to want to go look for it. And I had the pleasure of participating in another PSA with you, the End Allergies Together one word PSA, which was so moving and such an incredible experience. And your interview was just so touching. So if anybody hasn't seen that, they should also look for that one. I don't want to keep you too long. I could literally talk to you all day long, but there's one more thing that I really would love to cover if you have a moment,
Sure.
which is I have noticed that you have a huge heart. And I watch you on social media and I've seen you really talk about care for the caregiver, wellness, mental health. I've seen you post, I just want to reach out there and let you know that I'm here if you need anyone. You put your phone number on there sometimes. You really are there for the community in such a real, tangible way. And I know that I'm a big proponent also for talking about mental health and wellness when it comes to food allergy, any sort of chronic illness. You have to really take care of yourself in more ways than just physically. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts about that, where that comes from, your passion about it, how you've connected with people and how that's maybe impacted you.
So we had a difficult childhood growing up and everything, not just with food allergies, but, dealing with a lot of socioeconomical factors that played a big part of that. My mom, not being educated, was growing up very poor, living on public assistance. So, but we had people that always reached out to us, whether it was family or neighbors and everything. And they were either there to provide support to my mother or to be there to listen to her when she was going through some hard times with us. And as I got older, I started seeing it more and more, and it just became something that I adapted into my life, and when you give, you want to make sure it's genuine, that you're not looking to receive anything back, because it takes away from that. It's all about giving and not wanting to receive something back and saying that, hey, look what I did for that person. It's not about that. It's about how big is your heart and how much can you give of that part of your heart to someone else without it being reciprocated. And it shouldn't matter if it's not. So it just took on to that. And then when my son passed away, we have a lot of people that will always reach out, say, yeah, I'm going to be there for you no matter what, call me whenever. And when you do reach out to those persons and they don't have the time, it's hurtful. So I learned from that not everyone's going to be there for you. So I wanted to change the stigma on that, because grief can be many things, from a death, loss of relationship, job, and so many other factors that can play into that. But with my grief, I'm still suffering with that grief today. I don't think it will ever go away no matter what changes. So I wanted to give back and put my number out there and let people know that I'm here to hear. Like, I'm here to hear what it is that is bothering you. Whether it can be you stubbed your toe, or you had a bad thought, or you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You just need to vent, whether you're texting me, emailing me, or calling me. I'm going to be there to listen to you, and I'll provide you with whatever feedback I can give you. It's just that we want to know that there's someone there for me, no matter what. I've had people that reached out to me and send me a text message at 2, 3 in the morning. Hey, today was a rough day for me. And I will give them some words of affirmations that I like to use in my daily life, and, and give that back to them as well. It just gives a peace of mind. And, I remember I had a friend who was very suicidal. She was, she had her first kid and she was suffering from postpartum. And getting a call at 4 a.m. in the morning and that she wanted to, to end her life, that woke me up even on a grander scale. I was like, what if I didn't answer that call? Because I'm thinking, why are they reaching out to me? Why should I bother? Or listen and don't give the support that is needed, and something could have happened. I'm not saying everyone is that way, but everyone needs us a support. Whether your life is going well, 99% of the time, everything is great, but there will be that 1% that can kind of like just change your whole entire thought process. And we want to change that 1% every time, because it's never going to be 100, no matter what you think it is. It will never be 100. There's always something throughout the day that you think is going well that can be that little inclination that can actually just change the whole thing. So mental health is key, especially when it comes to food allergy parents or those suffering, people with children with disabilities or family members with disability, especially during this time of the pandemic with COVID, having everything just kind of like being put into this tiny little cup and overflowing. How are we going to maintain that water from spilling over? Having a support system, having someone to help you with your mental health, both mentally, physically, and spiritually, because you need to focus on the mind, but you also need to work on your body and work on centering your energy, and all that collaborates into just one being, and that's you. And if you can get yourself centered and everything focused around you centered, you're going to find that balance of a little bit of peace. You're never going to find 100% peace, but you're going to find a peace that you can sustain throughout your life. And that's why I put that out there, because we lose that part of focusing on our mental health. And I want to just make people know that I'm there to, I'm here to hear, basically.
That's just incredibly inspirational. And my biggest hope is that people listening to this sort of take that and do it themselves for their own networks and their own communities. I think one of the hardest things about food allergy, whether you have the food allergy or you're the food allergy parent, is that you can feel alone and you can feel disconnected, and you can definitely feel a grief in a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons. And so being able to have someone who understands, who listens, who validates, you don't even have to give advice, like you said, just to be there. You're here to hear. I hope that everyone watching will really take that to heart and think about reaching out to the people in their networks and just checking on them and making sure they're okay. I actually heard an amazing podcast about the holidays, having nothing to do with food allergy, but this amazing therapist gave this recommendation just to check in on people with 2 words: you okay? And it just allows that opportunity. If someone wants to share, they can. It's not a very intense question, but just checking on the ones in your network. So thank you for setting that example for the rest of us. Thank you for speaking about mental wellness and grief and all the pieces that go into this. It's really inspiring to watch. I want to just close with any tips you might have. So this series is called Take Action, and you certainly have taken an absolute amazing amount of action in a very short amount of time. If you were to give some advice to a food allergy parent or someone who has food allergies who really would like to get involved but kind of doesn't know where to start, what would be a few of your top tips?
One of my top tips is always go to where you can find factual resources to get more an in-depth understanding and knowledge of the food allergy or whatever it is that you want to take action in. Because when it comes to advocacy, it may seem like it's easy just to go and talk about food allergy, but you really have to get the attention of the people to get them to understand what you're talking about. So with that, go to factual resources like the FAIR website is definitely one of them, where you can get the resources and ways to advocate on how to take action. And take that information, go to your local community leaders and talk to them if you're looking to policy making or legislation that you want to implement, whether it's for a restaurant or a school or churches or whatever you have it for parks. Work with your local people there and they will kind of like help push you. But again, I was like, when it comes to that, you have to be right there neck and neck with those local officials, those legislators, so they know that you're serious about it and not just give them the information, let them do it on their own. They really depend on their constituents. They really do depend on you as someone that's going to guide them, because they may not know what it is that you need. So it's always good to work hand in hand with them. Taking actions, definitely, go to your schools, find out what's involved, what are they doing to be an advocate with food allergies, how do they implement programs, and how do they work with when it comes to food. There's so many things. You talk with your parent coordinator, talk with the nurse, the principal, and take action in that matter as well. And don't feel that you're being overbearing or you're cumbersome or you're just being a bother to them. If your child has food allergies, your child lives matter, as well as all the other children there with food allergies and asthma and other ailments. Their life matters as well, to make sure that you're putting something in place to protect them. So everyone there can get a better understanding, whether it's the teachers in the classroom, the lunchroom staff, the principal, the security guard, everyone getting involved will have a more in-depth understanding on what to do in case the event of something's happened, because you had advocated for something that's very serious for yourself, for your kid, and for the community that you're working with. We can put ourselves down if we feel like that no one is listening, and no one is listening, no one wants to hear me. So then you just stop. You feel like, I've done this much and no one wants to listen. It's like I've talked to probably thousands and thousands of people. And if I can get 10 people from 5,000, that's still impactful. So you want to get, whether it's that one person, because that one person can talk to 2 people, and those 2 people can talk to 3, and so on and so on. So it's a matter how you're you're pushing that message, how you're advocating, and making sure that they're going to grab whatever it is that you're giving. It's like almost like this whole 60-second marketing, like talking engagements, like I usually do with people. It's like, how can you grab the attention from people within 60 seconds? You got to have a story. You got to have a premise of what you're going to do and how you're going to conclude with your message with wherever you're going. So it takes a lot of work, but don't get discouraged. Keep pushing forward. And there are a lot of resources out there where you can get vital information that can help you take action and be an advocate for, for your son, for yourself, for a community, or nationally, however you want to take it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The elevator pitch is what I call it. You're sort of canned, ready to go speech to give anyone. And it's not an easy thing to put together, but that's such an important tip for people to think about. And I completely agree with you. It's a balance of having real, factual, accurate data, as well as your story to personalize it. And with that, every conversation you have is advocating. And so I hope everyone at home is so inspired to get involved and to hopefully follow in your footsteps in some way. You've given us such an amazing story. You've done such amazing work for our community and also these wonderful tips. So thank you so much, Thomas. What I want to close with is just where everyone can find you and follow you, your website, your social media, because I know you continue to just work. And I know everyone wants to keep an eye on all the great stuff you're doing. So tell us how we can get in touch with you and where we can watch you.
You can go to the website, the Elijah-Alavi Foundation.org. We're on Instagram at Elijah's Echo. And on Facebook, we're at the Elijah-Alavi Foundation on Facebook. And they can find everything that we're doing, from advocacy to mentoring to our ambassador program, whatever it is that our foundation is doing, we're going to be there. And we're very susceptible to people sending messages. If I don't have the answers, I'm easily to provide them with the resources where they can go to, whether it's for counseling or advocacy work. How can I get in touch with my legislator? I'm always happy to share and be a part of whatever it is that they need. So yes, the Elijah-Alavi Foundation.org, at Elijah's Echo on Instagram, and at the Elijah-Alavi Foundation on Facebook.
That's terrific. And as you mentioned, FAIR does have so many wonderful resources if you are interested in advocacy work or if you just need those facts and figures. So foodallergy.org is, of course, that website. And if anybody would like to follow along with our journey, you can find me at hillarytolcarter.com or on Instagram at hillarytolcarter. Thomas, I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite conversations of the year. I'm really, really honored that you spent this time with me. And I thank you on behalf of the entire food allergy community for what you do. And I just send very best wishes to Dina, Sebastian, and to you for continued healing and amazing work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm humble and grateful for you allowing me to speak with you today. And I know we have crossed paths many times, but it's always good to finally sit and talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.